When most people think about martial arts, they imagine East Asia, picturing the movies showcasing kung fu and samurais. But the evolution of martial arts didn't begin in one place or one culture. The idea that systems of combat could become codified, passed down, and practiced as a lifelong path is something that emerged independently across many societies. To understand how martial arts took shape, we need to look at the world's first civilizations. As humans transitioned from tribal life to structured societies, new needs emerged, like organized armies, ethical restraint, identity building, and the control of violence. When food surpluses allowed for specialization and hierarchy, combat training became its own discipline. In many places, it wasn't just about fighting. It was about who you were, what you believed in, and what your body could say on your behalf. The formalized combat systems started to represent identity and culture and were used as education tools. Let's walk through some of the world's earliest martial systems and see how their forms and purposes shaped the cultures they came from. The tombs near Beni Hassan, dated at 2500 BCE, Egyptian murals show hundreds of scenes of structured combat. We can see wrestling scenes on what is considered one of the oldest fresks picturing combat. We also find images of a kind of stick fighting which we now call Takib. It's one of the oldest documented martial practices in history. Takib began as a method of military preparation for soldiers, especially using the long staff. Textual and iconographic records suggest that it was used both in battlefield preparation and civic drills. But over time, it became something ceremonial that included public performances, rhythmic drumming, and controlled duels. The goal was displaying discipline and physical ability, not injuring the opponent. Takib became a way of showing mastery of the self. Reconstructed forms of Takib today emphasize body alignment and footwork patterns similar to fencing. Training methods included walking in circles around a central pillar to train spatial awareness. The use of rhythm and music was a big part of it as well. Takib was practiced by both soldiers and civilians, and some evidence suggests it was also used in initiation rites. Further east, in the great cities of Mesopotamia such as Ur and Nineveh, archaeological evidence shows us that wrestling was a central social practice in the society of a time. Stone reliefs from the Assyrian Empire, especially from the palace of Ashurbanipal from 7th century BCE, show grapplers in defined stances, suggesting the existence of technique and repetition. Wrestling in this region was symbolic. The Epic of Gilgamesh, possibly the earliest surviving epic in the world, opens with a wrestling match between the hero and his equal, Enkidu. It is a pivotal moment, marking the beginning of their friendship and highlighting Gilgamesh's strength and kingship. The match frames fighting as a civilizing ritual. From this evidence, we can conclude that wrestling was a form of bonding and hierarchy setting in Assyria. Skeletal remains from elite graves in Mesopotamia show signs of chronic stress in shoulders and vertebrae, hinting at long-term grappling training. Reliefs and cuneiform texts mention warrior preparation through repetitive drills. In Anatolia, Hittite and later Phrygian cultures continued the practice, often within male initiation rites. Wrestling pits were carved into rock and students trained with older wrestlers in isolated compounds. These spaces were about education, a pedagogy that used the body as a central pillar for taming the spirit. In southern India, particularly Kerala, we find one of the oldest martial systems still practiced today, called Kalaripayattu. Its roots stretch back at the least to 3rd century BCE, with some traditions linking it even further back to Vedic oral culture. What makes Kalari unique is its integration of combat with healing. Training includes strikes, locks, and weaponry, but also Ayurvedic massage, breath work, and meditative rituals. The aim of the system was the cultivation of embodied intelligence and not solely fighting. Weapons like curved val or the flexible urumi demanded total bodily control. Footwork drills and sequences known as chuvadu and miepayattu were practiced daily. Trainings began with body conditioning achieved through low stances and full body mobility work. Basic acrobatics were a must to master before progressing to wooden weapons and eventually to metal ones. The kalari, a sunken rectangular pit where the training took place, was treated as a sacred space. Students began each session by saluting the earth, their teacher, and lineage deities, showing a connection to the early yogic practices. The student-teacher relationship was sacred. It was the basis of the whole system, emphasizing the passing of the common knowledge through generations. Deeply rooted in the Hindu tradition, the Kalaripayattu practice recognizes the body as the site of lineage and transformation. In China, martial arts have deep roots. This is the land where most traditional martial arts that we know today originate from. Inscriptions from the Shang dynasty that ruled China from 1600 to 1046 BCE and texts from the Zhou dynasty period that came after and ruled till 256 BCE mention archery, wrestling, and military drills as a part of the preparation of nobility. Manuals like the 6-6 teaching and Sima Fa detail strategic and physical preparation of warriors who were mainly part of the aristocracy. By the Han Dynasty period, spanning from the 206 BCE to 220 CE, the training became highly entangled with philosophy. Confucianism emphasized order and duty, while Taoism emphasized harmony and fluidity. Together, they shaped martial practices that were about both control and spontaneity, making them more than just combat systems, but school of deep psychology and individual transformation. The Shaolin Temple, established in the 5th century CE, became the heart and the head of the training of Chinese martial artists. Here, martial movement was combined with Zen meditation and other traditional practices that cultivate the mind. Forms practiced by the trainees mimicked animals and cycles of nature. The Yi Jing Ying, a text attributed to Shaolin monks, outlines postures designed to strengthen tendons and harmonize breath. Internal styles like Tai Chi Chuan that developed later focused on intentional spiral movement and dynamic balance. Training in Shaolin included weapons, pair drills, forms, and strength building using stone weights or body weight resistance. For Chinese systems, practice was about aligning internal states with external action and cultivating a calm center within the chaos. In classical Greece, physical training was seen as a civic duty. Coming to the end of the period that is historically referred to as Greek Dark Ages, that lasted from about 1100 to 800 BCE, the political and cultural landscape was drastically changing. The emerging city-states allowed a new identity to start forming, and physical education became a very important part of it. All free young men trained in specially designated areas called gymnasia, which were public spaces for athletic training and social interaction, and palestre, where they learned wrestling, boxing, and the brutally combined martial art form known as pankration. With the establishment of Olympic Games in 648 BCE, pankration formed part of the curriculum. Almost all techniques were legal, except biting and eye gouging. It was full contact, full range combat, and it was extremely effective and spectacular. Sculpture, vase art, and written accounts from the 5th and 4th centuries BCE give us real detail of the training of the time, like specific grips, stances, and even structured sparring. Greek martial culture was surprisingly methodical, putting aside aggression and inviting self-cultivation and personal development. They worked on posture, correcting it with rods. Wrestling included holds such as the lock, neck wrench, and hip throw. Greek philosophers saw physical agility and strength as a very important part of human life. Such figures as Plato and Aristotle advocated for balanced education, where physical training developed both physical and ethical excellence. The body of a Greek citizen of the time was meant to be virtuous and well measured. The nudity, which exposed the beauty of athletic body, was an important part of the culture. Developing an agile body was just as important as developing an agile mind. Across the African continent, martial systems evolved as part of ritual, community, and survival. Not many of them were codified in manuals, but they were embodied, passed down the generation to generation in oral form and through practice and performance. In Ethiopia, donga stick fighting is still used in rites of passage. Young men train in balance timing and, interestingly, in verbal provocation. Fighters sharpen reflexes through call and response drills and footwork practice in rhythm. The tribe gathers for the duel and the winners continue to fight each other until one last victor remains. Losers are expected to accept their defeat gracefully and withdraw from the field. The aim is for young men to duel with stick fights in order to show their strength and masculinity and to gain respect from their family and the community. In Ngolo is a traditional martial art that combines fighting and dance. They use inverted kicks, sweeps, and emphasize inverted positions in general. Everything is performed with the music. This fighting style finds an inspiration in nature, involving the imitations of animal behaviors. In Ngolo, training was conducted in a circle with drums, where each motion echoed spiritual stories and moral allegories. It's believed to be the predecessor of Brazilian capoeira. African martial practices didn't separate combat from storytelling. Each move had meaning, it honored ancestors, taught self-discipline, and turned the body into a vessel for cultural memory. Japan's martial evolution reflects the country's broader emphasis on structure and honor. Early battlefield systems were pragmatic. They included archery on horseback called yabusame, spear work called sojutsu, and various techniques of the sword. Sumo is generally considered the oldest reference unarmed Japanese martial art, with documented matches dating back to 23 BCE. While other martial arts developed later, sumo's origins as a ritual dance and military training exercise predate many other forms. During Heian period, which lasted from 794 to 1185 CE, martial arts became systems of personal cultivation. Koryu, or old-school martial traditions like Kashima Shinto-ryu and Katori Shinto-ryu, created detailed curricula and spiritual codes. Practitioners trained in sequence from etiquette to solo kata to leaf weapon sparring. Scrolls outlined each stage of training and were passed down carefully. By the 17th century, peace under the Tokugawa shogunate shifted the focus from training solely for killing to using it for inner transformation. Japanese martial arts, often referred to as Budo, encompass a diverse range of combat systems rooted in culture and tradition. These martial arts can be broadly categorized into Koryu, the old style, and Gendai Budo, which refers to modern martial arts. Japanese martial arts are not only about physical techniques, but they also emphasize mental and spiritual development, discipline, and respect. The old-style martial arts incorporate kata, a fixed movement forms which serves as a foundation for training and skill development. More modern forms of training like judo or jiu-jitsu also use sparring. Across all these cultures and systems they developed, we see common patterns, practical combat merging with ritual or philosophical structure. In all of them, at some point, the shift from improvisation to repeatable pedagogy had taken place, which creates a model of instruction based on repetition and slow transformation. The body in these systems seen not just as muscle and bone, but as a tool to achieve higher state, develop control, and build character. Martial arts began with necessity, following the natural development of human civilizations. But as the times were changing, they have transformed and became philosophies and systems of education. Many martial arts today are not so much about combat, but more about being able to remember and become. Every movement holds a trace of someone who came before, and so when you train martial arts, you are continuing a human tradition older than history itself. Some systems emphasized destruction, while others emphasized healing. Some belong to warriors, others to monks, villagers, or nomads, but all of them answer the same question: what kind of person are you shaping through practice?